Okay, I'd like to call the March 18th Board of Supervisors meeting to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Just want to announce that we met in executive session briefly to discuss litigation and ongoing legal matters. And then I want to read a brief statement. On Thursday, March 24th at 7 p.m. at New Garden Town Hall, which is here, there is a planned public meeting at the request of state officials from the Departments of Agriculture, Environmental Protection, and Health to provide a summary of findings known as a letter health consultation report based on a multi-year study that measured levels of hydrogen sulfide, H2S, at multiple monitoring sites in the township. To date, New Garden Township has not been provided with any preliminary findings of fact as to the results of the study, nor has it received any version, draft, or final of the letter health consultation report. The township wants to express to the community its desire to maintain transparency and is a willing stakeholder to relay all available information on this very important local issue regarding air quality. Of note, the upcoming Thursday, March 24th public meeting by state officials represents the first portion of public information on the air quality issue. However, New Garden Township has been proactive by commissioning a second analysis conducted by Professor Lorenzo Sina and his research team of public and environmental health experts at Westchester University, and will immediately release all findings of facts to the public when provided. Okay, and do we have any public comment? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just curious to know if any representatives from the mushroom industry have maybe invited to your college.
Do you know if they've been invited?
It was more just a mass communication. There weren't specific invites sent out from the township. So if anybody was seeing a lot of our communications and they decided to RSVP, that is, at their own, just wanting to attend and be a part of the meeting. But in terms of providing prior notification to the township, no, that has not been the case. And to clarify, it was for Thursday, March 21st. I think it was 24th that was read out loud, but Thursday, March 21st at 7 p.m. here at New Garden Town Hall.
It has 24th on the thing, so I'm just a robot.
No.
Okay. Any public comments? Nope. All right. Go to public hearing. We have no public hearings. Okay. Recognitions. No recognitions. All right. Motoring right through. Presentations then. Also none. Let's have a approval of meeting minutes from the February 26th meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second to adopt them as submitted.
Okay. Any discussion? Yep. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Motions are approved. All right. Do we have a approval to pay the invoices of $58,152.53 and unpaid invoices of $152,386.23 for a total of $210,538.76?
I'll move to pay all of the listed disbursements in the amount of $210,538.76, and I have no conflicts, David.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Right. No public safety reports at this time. We're moving to the quarterly thing, so we'll have reports in April.
Next month. And that was also another update for the April meeting being on April 22nd, vice the, I believe it was originally intended date of the 15th for attendance for the commissioners at PSAT or supervisors at PSATs.
Yes.
So that's why we'll be moving it back, and we'll update the announcements and put it out online.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we're moving it back from April 15th to April 22nd. So any unfinished business? I assume not. Nope. And moving on to new business then. We have final land development for 156 and 162 Bancroft Road.
This is a resolution number 2024-6. It's several pages long, so I'll try to condense it. There are a series of whereases. The property is at 157 and 162 Bancroft Road. It's in the R2 zone, sorry. It's in the R2 development zone. They're going to construct construct 98 townhouse units. They've received conditional use approval to do that. They received a variance from lighting to reduce the amount of lighting that's required there. And they are going to pay into the township treasury $77,000 and change for fees in lieu of recreation. And they have to comply with all the terms of the engineering review letters by both the traffic engineer and the township engineer generally. So what this resolution does is to recite all of those whereases and then establish by order that they have to supply us with a stormwater management agreement, financial security and land development agreements, and a fire hydrant agreement, so that the township will have to pay Chester Water, and then the residents there will have to pay the township for the cost of the hydrants. Those are all of the elements of the resolution, and it approves the land development plan as submitted for the 98 townhouse units.
Do we have a motion to approve the final land development?
Yes, so, I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2024-006 for Roush Chamber.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we have a comprehensive zoning ordinance consultant. Do we know the schedule for when they're going to start breaking?
If I still have some of the people here, so obviously a lot still has to be done in terms of final recordation of the plan. So there is a little bit of an understanding that just because we're approving something tonight doesn't mean we're going to see construction and shovels hitting the dirt right away. But I don't want to put you guys on the spot in terms of just plan build out date. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's for the
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind, I can probably just kind of go over here in terms of the process for the agenda item about the approval of the recommended consultant for the comprehensive zoning ordinance and map update project. So just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, this was based off of the submitted and advertised RFP to seek solicitations for proposals from any qualified firms based on the RFP defined criteria, which was actually advertised and approved to advertise at the December meeting. And so through that, we submitted the advertisement and got it out with a window that was closed for proposals to the township by the end of January, January 31st. In that, we received, I believe, 7 highly qualified firms that were interested in our project. We had kind of follow-up and FAQs during the process in the beginning of January, just to kind of get an understanding of who was going to be interested and what types of questions they had to elaborate on the scope of the proposal. So everything that was delivered to the township is pretty much well in an understanding of the scope that we're looking for here in the township. With that, of course, RFP proposal nominations require thorough evaluation. So we constructed a team consisting of township staff to go through a 4-phase scoring and evaluation criteria component, basically kind of lifting up those at the final stages of review, kind of separate out the ones that we thought were stronger than others. So we did our own internal reviews, and then we did a tabling session to kind of nominate a short list of 3 of the 7. And then within that, we broke out into follow-ups with all of their listed references, as well as an informal, roughly 30 minutes to an hour meeting with each vendor, just to make sure that what they were saying is kind of as advertised. And I think my emphasis to the team was don't hold back and basically ask them everything, because this is a very important project. That was inclusive of things like not only just what you're saying, but how you plan to actually go through the process with us as a township. So project management skills were also vetted as well as some of their technical capacity around GIS, basically to deliver on certain projects that we want to implement for our own kind of internal GIS mapping purposes as well. So with that, we broke out from all 7 now to a final list of 1. And that's what you're seeing in the proposal tonight is the proposal for staff identifying Michael Baker International as the proposed recommended consultant that we wanted to provide to the board. Of all of these 7 proposals, pretty much the most part, everybody was kind of in the same wheelhouse for cost. So just so everybody knows, RFPs aren't IFBs, so we don't have to go to the lowest common proposal price. And so while also in the scoring and evaluation, cost is considered. It's not an actual scored metric. We consider it, but it is part of the decision-making process. So you will see in that scoring matrix, cost is not a column. That's why we kind of evaluate it as, we'll call it objectively as possible to get to a percentage score per qualifying area. So you will be able to see at the end of the agenda item for this packet item, an actual scoring matrix that was inclusive of all phases. And so the other part of this was, while it wasn't included in the original RFP, during the pre-proposal process, we kind of understood that the ability to incorporate not only a zoning ordinance, but also a saldo review and update was also kind of complementary to the entire ask. And so what you're seeing there is 2 prices, one for the actual construct of the zoning ordinance and map update, and the other one being solely just for the saldo update. Now, what we're able to do is go with our FY24 plan of approving just the ordinance package because saldo will be much more mature in the process when we get there. So it's kind of like an end of delivery rather than the first thing we're going to do. So we would come back, but still have the ability to capture the quoted rate that we're getting today for a saldo project that we won't have to really do until next year. And then clarifying with Chester County Planning Commission, that's also one that we can reapply for another grant to subsidize that project as well. And so also a part of this project was trying to work with Chester County Planning about the language contained in some of the provisions to adopt zoning that not only fits Chester County planning initiatives, but New Garden initiatives to kind of make it more competitive to seek a grant assistance through the Vision Partnership Program. It's the Landscapes 3 cash grant program, and you can get proposals approved for up to $50,000, so roughly about half off the actual quoted price, but I believe it's $99,000 for just the zoning ordinance update. And then we would take that $29,000 saldo and reapply, and then you can possibly get the full amount because there's no percentage up to in terms of like only 50% subsidy. You can get it up to 50,000, which is roughly usually about half of the cost of some of these zoning projects. So what you have in front of you is the recommended staff recommendation. But before, if you have any questions to me about just the scope of the proposal, any questions about Michael Baker, I did put out, but I think they were going to try to be hopping on shortly, a representative from Michael Baker on the line. I'm looking on the Zoom. They're not on yet because they were going to be a little bit late today. But if you have any questions from both you, the board, and the public, let me know.
Any questions from the board? No. Any questions from the public? No. Should we wait for them or just move on? No?
That's only if you have questions. So this is really just like making sure that the takeaway is that this was a very thorough scoring process and a very open process to come to a conclusion, and that this is also part of that planned 18-month initiative that we're going to go through to get this implemented. And all throughout the process, there's going to be a lot of moments in time for public engagement. So this is going to be just the start. And so kickoff approving today still leads to a roughly about an April, we'll call it kickoff of the project date. And then from there, essentially, we're still trying to keep on schedule for roughly December 2025 planned implementation of the adopted ordinance that we would go through. So
Okay.
none of that has changed up until this point.
All right. Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Make a motion to approve. We have a second?
I will second the motion.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, then we go spend the master plan.
And Kate, is it just you tonight, or is Rick joining? Rick is not joining solo. All right. And Kathy, can you hear me? I saw you just hopped on the line.
I can hear you.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
I'll send you a follow-up email, but the motion was approved. We'll talk about follow-ups here in a second, but thank you.
Thank you. Did you need me to stay on the line? Do you have questions for me?
Good evening. I'm Kate Rahman from Natural Lands. I'm here to talk to you about the new preserve plan for the former Lochnairn Golf Course. The project team is myself and my colleague Rick Traley, who could not be here this evening. He's a registered landscape architect and professional planner. We've been working with Mike Buck, your Parks and Open Space Superintendent for the township, as well as Chris and the public.
Kate, sorry to interrupt. Can you guys hear? Is that what your issue is?
Close, got it.
There we go.
Is this better? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if you haven't been to a township meeting in a while, you might be wondering what Natural Lands is doing here. If you're familiar with our public spaces, we are one of the region's oldest and largest land conservation organizations. We own and manage 42 nature preserves and 1 public garden that total more than 23,000 acres. So we worked with municipalities and municipal clients and the Commonwealth to protect more than 135 acres of land, 135,000 acres of land total. So we have quite a lot of experience designing and stewarding public spaces that we own and maintain. So we have a consulting team that works primarily with municipal clients on acquisition and design of public spaces. So Natural Lands has been working with New Garden Township for quite some time on acquisitions. And these are some of our public spaces that are available in the region near New Garden. Oops. So we are excited to be working with the township on the plan for this preserve. This is our scope of work for the preserve plan update. I know many of you in the room have heard about the plan before. So we had a committee meeting back in March of 2023. We presented the initial draft back in July of 2023. And then we had a focus group with primarily neighbors where we walked around the preserve and looking at the spaces they were concerned about and addressing those concerns. We've also conducted 5 key person interviews. I'm going to talk a little bit about another project that has come up as well. But first, funding. So we have quite a few sources of funding for the planning effort. This plan is in fact 100% funded. We also have 1 anonymous donor. If you're in the room, thank you. So no township funds were necessary for the planning effort, but there are some strings attached. The funding is contingent upon water quality being enhanced, and that was one of the stipulations, from both the White Clay Wild and Scenic Partnership as well as the DRWI, the Delaware River Watershed Initiative. So for tonight, I'm gonna summarize some of the comments that we've heard from the committee meetings in the last public meeting. We had a scorecard we handed out at the last public meeting to gain comments and feedback as well. Then we're gonna review the updated draft master plan. And at that point, we're gonna request that the Board of Supervisors consider adopting the draft master plan. So how many of you have been to this site? Wonderful. So I'm sure you know what a special opportunity this is for the residents of New Garden and the region. The Smedley family's generosity made this possible. I'm sure you saw on the costs breakdown for the slide, they sold this property to the township at less than full cost. And it's really not every day that a township has the ability to purchase and restore a golf course. So we hope that you all are excited as we are about this plan and are ready to provide some comments. So the location, this is in the the property is in the northwestern corner of the township. You have bordering London Grove Township as well as West Marlborough Township. As we go through the presentation, I'm going to talk about the west side here and the east side of the preserve. And that is because Church Road divides the site in half. So on the western portion of the site, we have the east branch of the White Clay Creek, which runs along the western boundary of the property here. This is Route 1 to the south. We also have Evans Brook. Evans Brook is a tributary to the White Clay. It flows across the site here, comes up to the north a little bit and then back down. There's an earthen dam on the western side. This slows the flow of Evans Brook, and the brook is a little wider. It's by the restaurant parcel. The restaurant parcel was subdivided out of the property before the township closed on the property in January 2023. So the earthen dam is kind of in this corner here. There are also 6 ponds. The township maintenance facility, this was the old golf course maintenance facility across from Sherwood Road. And 6 ponds, 6 bridges, 2.3 miles of cart paths on this side. There is the Great House and Farmhouse Complex, and there's a few residential neighbors on this side of the site here off of McHugh Road, just a couple. The eastern portion also contains Evans Brook, 5 ponds, including the big pond. There's one very large pond that's over 15 feet deep over there. There's 1.6 miles of cart paths on this side of the site, 4 bridges. The Bowling Green Brandywine Treatment Center is right here. So that's a significant neighbor. And then there's some residential neighbors along Sherwood Drive. Many of these neighbors came with us during the focus group site walk and provided some comments. This site does have underlying floodplains and hydric soils, as well as some slopes. The site slopes down from Route 1, which make this site more appropriate for passive recreation than active recreation. This is not a site that's appropriate for playing fields. So this is some of the comments we received from the public meeting. Our scorecard asked that folks let us know if we were on target for some of the concepts that we presented at the last meeting. Overall, we were on target. There were some comments during the open house portion of that meeting that we addressed more specifically. We also had a spot where people could suggest a name. There was 9 votes for Loch Nairn Preserve, that was the highest number for the same name. Sherwood Preserve had 4 votes, and then we had a number of other similar names with 1 vote. As I mentioned earlier, since the project kicked off and since the last public meeting and the site walk, the focus group site walk, there is a new initiative. So the Loch Nairn site was selected for a PennDOT sediment remediation initiative, and we have worked to accommodate that work into the master plan. So I'm going to go through some of the concepts on the plan. Oops. And in this order. So we're going to talk about restoration first, and then ponds, trails, neighboring uses, access and parking, and then other amenities. I'm going to ask that we hold questions until the end. You're going to see some things on the master plan that you might want to ask questions about, but I'm going to try to go through these concepts methodically. And so let's just hold questions till we are able to go through all of the components here. So in terms of restoration, why restoration? So golf courses are not really an ecologically beneficial landscape. So this site has been altered significantly. Water flows down from Route 1 and it flows right across the turf grass. Turf grass basically functions as impervious cover, and it picks up sediment, fertilizers, herbicide, pesticide, and it brings those things into the tributary and eventually the main branch of the White Clay. The floodplains and wetlands have been removed and the streams have been realigned and channelized. And this is all to add interest to the golf course, right? Like this is to create the fairways and make it fun for golfers. There also would be many more trees on this site in a normal environment, but those trees have been removed so that you have the open fairways. And that takes shade out. There's no shade over any of the tributaries or any of the water features really. So that's why restoration is necessary. There are some goals with the restoration in mind, which are to enhance the ecological function of the site, enhance water quality, biodiversity, and resilience. So this is the master plan map, just like a quick orientation of some of the sites here, of some of the features in the legend. The red hatch is the stream restoration area. Hannah from Res is here tonight and is gonna speak a little bit more about the stream restoration in the pond section of the presentation. The yellow is proposed meadow. This yellow here, and over here. And then the darker green is proposed forest. And that sort of lime green is forest along waterways, which we call a riparian buffer. So we're gonna do a close-up on the west side first and then the east side. So here on the west side, primarily forest. So the majority of this side is proposed for forest planting. We recommend 4 to 6 foot restoration grade trees. These trees are in tubes until they're about 10 feet tall, which takes 3 to 5 years. There are a considerable number of dead trees on the site. Where there are dead trees in the middle of meadows or an area that's proposed to be forested, we recommend that the township just leave them there. Those, what we call snags, provide habitat for birds and other mammals, and they're fine. Where there are dead trees near proposed parking areas, proposed trails, or gathering areas, we recommend that the township remove those trees. And also consider inspecting the area for dead trees on a regular basis so that there are no hazards on the site. There is some meadow proposed here off McHugh. The main branch of the white clay is right here, and these are some of those backyards. So that open area is proposed there. We have a larger buffer along the main branch of the white clay. There's also some meadow proposed along Church Road. So next we're going to move to the eastern side of the site. On the eastern side of the site, we have planned significantly more meadow. We are proposing 3 different types of meadow seed mixes. They are based on the soil types, but they all contain wildflowers and meadow grasses. So on this side, you can see we do have a forested buffer on the south side of Evans Brook. There's a bit of a meadow behind the homes here along Sherwood Drive, and that's going to create a bit of a visual buffer. Meadows get quite tall. Little blue stem is one of the species in many of these mixes, and even though it's called little blue stem, it's about 4 feet high. It just distinguishes it from big blue stem, which is 6 feet and up. So this will create a bit of a buffer here behind those areas. Around the whole big pond area is proposed as meadow as well. So moving on to ponds, right? So the Pennsylvania, just a moment, please. I'm hanging on to too many things. Okay. So Pennsylvania's geography and hydrology does not support ponds. So all of the ponds on this site have been created by humans, and there isn't really a natural way to maintain them. They are not shaded, so they're receiving this full sun, and that creates warmer temperatures and algae. And that warmer water is harmful to fish. Also on this site, all of these ponds are connected to Evans Brook. So that warm algae-filled water backfills into Evans Brook and makes its way into the white clay. There are 10 ponds total. The largest one in this corner here is 15 feet deep. The rest of them are pretty shallow, and some of them have dried up already because they were piped in and they collected water from the irrigation system on the golf course. So pond maintenance does require ongoing chemical testing as well as aerators, which require electricity to keep water moving. There are some other issues with the ponds. We have heard from neighbors that anglers are parking at the end of the cul-de-sac here on Sherwood Drive to access that larger pond. Also, the ponds they pose a health risk. You don't want people or dogs getting into the ponds. So we are recommending that all of the ponds be drained and restored to more natural conditions. The only pond that provides any significant habitat is that larger one, but draining it is gonna be more beneficial for a greater number of native species and really reduce over time the risk and cost to the township associated with that pond. Hannah, do you wanna come up and talk about your stream restoration?
Thank you. My name is Hannah Kalk. I'm a restoration ecologist and a project manager with a company called Res. I believe one of my coworkers has spoken to you before. I'm really excited to be working with the township and really excited to be working on a golf course that we actually get to do full length restoration on. So we Res are contracted with PennDOT, the Turnpike, New Garden Township, to maximize MS4 sediment reduction credits to help meet the MS4 permittee's goals. This site is a really great opportunity, in part because of the flexibility that we have to actually have full-length floodplains, but also it's probably the single largest contiguous stream length in the township, and I've seen probably about every stream in this township now, trying to find some good prospects for you. So what we Res are proposing to do in the way that we've been speaking with Natural Lands and the township with regard to the footprint for the project that would go into the MS4 BMP, so best management practice, to restore, not just restore substantial wetlands on this site, but also to maximize this total suspended sediment contribution coming from the site. The goal in this footprint here is, and we've done pretty extensive baseline data work. We're in the process of designing this right now. We have all kinds of survey and drone footage. The goal is to get as much wetland on the landscape as possible. And you've got a lot of good space here. And then the stream on site is obviously very heavily modified. It's very degraded. We're going to give it a more natural geometry, and we're going to make the banks shallow and the stream relatively narrow so that you encourage flooding into these new wetlands. So the majority of this footprint in red will be a stream and wetland complex. There will be areas where we notch the ponds, ideally prior to construction, just to drain them slowly so that they're easier to work with. And then we would grade those to maximize wetland acreage. So those will all be marshes. We will have native plantings. We will work with Natural Lands to make sure that all of our herbaceous and woody plantings are consistent with their goals for the rest of the plan. But we will actually, this one doesn't have this trip, but we will also have that trip there that's got a pretty ugly failing culvert from under the road there. We'll get that all cleaned up too. So we aren't in our scope proposing anything associated with the big pond on the east side, but we would definitely support trying to find a way to get that off the landscape. Is there anything else we want to hit? No? Okay. Our goal would, we Res, as part of this PennDOT contract, will be funding this footprint. And we would hope to be in construction starting in this fall. So probably this will be implemented prior to any of the other activities associated with the master plan for the rest of the site.
Thank you, Hannah. So next, we're going to talk about trails. So as I said earlier, the western side of the site has 2.3 miles of trails, and the east side has 1.6 miles for 3.9 miles total. This is great news because in your 2019 trail prioritization plan, one of the comments we heard from residents was that the trails aren't long enough. So the western side specifically is going to provide a series of loops. And so people can enjoy these trails for longer and make the trip a little more worthwhile. Not all of the trails are absolutely necessary or serve the purpose of the master plan. There are some redundant trails, cart paths with a parallel cart path running nearby. And some of the cart paths take you to places no one wants to see, like the highway. You know, I don't think that the visitors are going to want to go up there. So, and in backyards, we've removed one trail. It was actually, it would just be a maintenance cart path along the back of Sherwood. So let's take a look at how these new systems are configured. So here's the overall site. The trails would start here. We're going to talk about parking in a minute, but you would, if you wanted to stay on the western side, you could head north and then walk along the Evans Brook. And then you have a series of loops here that you could do that take you to various parts of the site. We have considered attractive views and changes. So, you know, this, if you remember, for restoration is proposed as primarily forest, but then you could cross into the meadow and enjoy that area. As the western side is proposed in more trees, it's going to have great fall color and interest on that side. The eastern side, let's get a close-up of the western side first. So that's the trail system proposed there. Again, using the existing cart paths. The cart paths in some sections are in okay shape, but not great shape. They're buckled in some places, and we recommend in the budget that they be updated. We do also have some crossings here. The pink plus signs here are crossings to be maintained. So there's one by the earthen dam. You can see that feature there. There's one that crosses into the restaurant site. There is another one by the lima bean shaped pond, and there is another one in the corner up here. That's an existing bridge on the trail. The red crossings are proposed to be removed because they're not going to be needed, and it's going to be more affordable in the long term to not have to maintain so many crossings. So on the eastern side, again, on the eastern side, we're proposing more meadow. So you're going to have a more open feel over here. There is an existing cart path of 1.6 miles, and you're going to see the same thing with the crossings here. There are some crossings that need to be maintained and some crossings that could be removed. So, oops. Skipped ahead here. So there is one loop on this side. There isn't the series of loops that we have on the other side. This loop does go around the where the big pond footprint would be. So this would be more of a wetland complex over here. There was a cart path behind here. It's just what I was mentioning. For the privacy of these residents, we are proposing to keep that, but for maintenance only, and there'd be a gate at the end. They're also going to have the meadow on the other side of that maintenance path so that people can't see into their backyards. So yeah, this is going to provide some difference too. In the summer, the meadow is going to provide some color, and then in the fall, it turns a kind of golden color, and so you can enjoy that during the winter months. So neighboring uses and buffers is next. So we have more neighboring uses. Actually, all the neighboring uses that where people requested buffers are on the eastern side. There's a farm across from here. We had heard that there's quite a bit of dust certain times of year from that farm. So we're recommending some evergreen and fruit trees there. I'm sorry, flowering trees to provide that buffer. Along Bowling Green, we're proposing a very thick and tall groupings of shrubs and trees. There is a fence there, but it's not a particularly attractive fence, and so we want to block the view of the facility. And then the other buffer is that taller meadow, and then the residents on Sherwood Drive will have the view of the canopy behind from those tree plantings. So that will be a visual buffer. They won't feel like there's visitors to the preserve in their backyards. So next is the plan for parking. So we're going to talk about a couple of things in regards to parking. There's, the master plan for parking. There's another plan for temporary parking, which we've included. And then Jeff from McMahon is here to discuss plans for some improvements along Church Road. So this is the proposed parking location. And this is an ideal location for the parking for a few reasons. The site distance here is better than it is at all the other locations we considered. So this is the parking entrance. It's directly across from Sherwood Drive. So from an alignment perspective, that's also beneficial to have that, the traffic is gonna be slowing down there to enter in, but then Sherwood is right across the way there. It's also central to the site. This is the proposed maintenance facility here where the township is gonna be keeping equipment necessary for them. And they need a safe way to get there. So there would be a gate at the end of the parking lot that would limit access to this facility, at least initially. But this provides a great way for the township to access that building and do what they need to do there. We did consider several other locations, but there was major concerns from neighbors regarding privacy, conflicts with neighboring uses, distance from existing driveways, and potential damage to environmental features. We do know that folks really want access to the site now. The acquisition was completed in January of 2023, and the parking that I described here is going to take some time to establish. So Mike has come up with a temporary solution on the western side. We're going to travel west on McHugh Road this way, actually past the restaurant complex. So this area, this is an access drive to the end of this cul-de-sac, which is actually in London Grove. And this access drive will be able to provide some parking there. Mike, did you want to talk about this? Sorry if I'm. Okay, sure.
Hello, everyone. Just to recap our temporary parking proposal and current plan from last month. So as Kate mentioned, it's right here off of McHugh Road. This is a service road. It's owned by the township. So to access this, and you would come down, I need to shoot Dave in the face with laser. So you would come up Church, make a left onto McHugh, drive past the existing parking lot, go past the first entrance, the second entrance, and then the next left turn will give you access to this parking area. Now, once you park here, you'll exit your vehicle, walk down the service road, and then enter the park right in this area. There's a grass path with easy access to this old golf cart path. Again, there's space for approximately 10 to 12 vehicles here if you parallel park perfectly. And then this is what the entrance to the service road looks like. You can see way back here as one of the township vehicles parked, just to give you some scale. And this is not the scale, but just an idea of how cars can park along the service road. And then that leads into the pedestrian safety improvements along Church Road.
Thanks, Mike. So there was a tragic accident along Church Road in summer 2022 and just south of McHugh Road. And so McMahon, the township traffic consultants, have been evaluating that area since then. So as you can see from some of these photos, visibility is fairly limited. There are 4 of us here. We were at a site evaluation that day, but you can see there's gate posts and telephone poles and trees, and this is just what it looks like here. And so to enhance the safety of this crossing, which would be the trail crossing, this would not be the vehicular crossing, but the trail would cross the road here. Jeff from McMahon is going to talk through some of what they've proposed.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff Gaiman from, well, not McMahon anymore. We've now changed our name. It's Bowman, the township traffic consultant. And we took a look at the need for pedestrian improvements to get pedestrians from the west side of the park to the east side of the park. Now, as you can see here, my graphics kind of turned. Church Road to the right of the exhibit is north. So anyway, What we're proposing is a defined high visibility crosswalk to connect the two sections of trail across Church Road. We're proposing some advanced pedestrian warning signs to also, warn oncoming drivers of the pedestrians that can cross at that location. And then the last thing that we've done is because we know that traffic is traveling over the posted speed limit on Church Road today, we've proposed some medians in the center of Church Road, which hopefully will cause traffic to slow down as they approach this crossing. We've got one median on the north side of the crossing, which actually is in West. Thank you, West Marlboro Township. And then on the south side, we've got the median in New Garden Township. Now, all of these improvements that we're looking at here, let me back up. One other thing we're proposing is to trim some vegetation and some trees on either side of the crossing so that, number one, the crossing itself is more visible to oncoming traffic. And number two, so as pedestrians approach, they'll be able to see vehicles, approaching in either direction on Church Road. But the other thing I did want to mention here is that the section of Church Road in New Garden Township is a state road, so that the further approvals from PennDOT will be required to do some of these pedestrian improvements. But, and we haven't had those discussions yet, but this is from what we've done to date, this is our, this would be our recommendation to go to PennDOT with a design similar to this. And then this is the new access location for the parking that is opposite Sherwood Drive. Again, not many improvements here other than the need to keep those green dotted areas, which are now on, again, remember West is on the north side or on the top of Church Road. But we would need to provide some tree clearing to the south to make sure that there's good visibility for vehicles exiting that proposed access for the parking.
Thank you, Jeff. In terms of the number of parking spaces, we are proposing that the parking be considered in pods. So start with maybe 20 spaces. As you can see from the graphic here, oh, sorry, so far back. There is a flat area that used to be a fairway, a bit behind the proposed parking. So the township could expand the parking there in the future if they'd like to. Or for events, you can just have a parking on a grass area. That's something that could be accommodated there. We're also proposing some amenities near that parking lot, tables to sit if you're gonna wait for people who might be meeting there. We haven't, the master plan does not include exact locations, but these amenities have been included in our proposed budget, which is next. So this is the proposed costs of what has been included in the master plan. These are the broad categories, but I have a copy of the specific budget, and I can note some of the more high cost items in each category if you like. We are not recommending that all of this be done at once. So phasing would be done in the following order. So we think about immediate parking access first, so that folks can start using the site. Then the stream restoration Hannah described as taking place, pond remediation, and then think about permanent parking access, and then the buffer landscaping, the restoration landscaping, and then your finishing details and amenities like signs and benches and other components that help make the site, accessible for all and give people spaces to enjoy and also, rest if they need a break. Mike, is Linda here this evening? No, we have, the township grants, writer has pulled together this list of grants that would cover some of these costs. I've pulled them in a chart, oops, sorry, the chart's not here. But the good news is that the proposed grants, total $4.9 million. That is if the maximum award was, awarded every time. That's something to think about, but the grants need to be phased. There's usually gaps in time between when you apply and when you find out if the grant has been awarded. That brings me to the end, but I want to go back to a slide of the full master plan in case we need to address any questions. Oh. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Yeah, I was gonna say, any board members? Questions? No? Public?
I don't think that's on.
Good evening.
I had a couple questions about the cart paths or the paths that you are proposing. Are you proposing the same sort of material, the asphalt, the cart paths? Are you proposing to use more natural materials, dirt, stones, things like that?
We're proposing that they be paved.
Excellent. Are the main ways to get to the pathways going to be the crossings in the parking lots, or are there going to be entrances for people to access to park from just without parking? If they're walking along the roads or biking in the area, there's accesses that we could reach without having to go into the parking lot.
That's a great question. So on this side here, we have proposed an access point, but really it was considered for neighbors only. So if you live along Sherwood Drive, there could be a way, way you could just access from here. There would need to be some grading done because there's quite a steep slope. And also we're proposing that that pond be removed. So that landscape's going to change quite a bit. There are concerns about privacy though. So if you cannot, there's going to be no parking along Sherwood Drive.
Absolutely. I was more wondering along the main roadway, it's Church Road, and I forget the name of the other road that is.
Up here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was more wondering about those roads because that's where I see more bikers are, and if it's going to be all paved pathways. I know quite a few people who would probably enjoy going through all the loops, so.
Wonderful. Well, there is the cart paths do connect here. And that's the crosswalk that Jeff just showed us. And then there is another entrance point here on this side on Q.
That's excellent.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
You want to come up, Mr. Dungy?
Just two questions. First, keeping in mind we just had a tax increase, how much is this thing gonna cost us? Not the 4.5 million, but realistically, how much?
Yeah, the annual maintenance, you mean?
Well, that was my second question.
Yeah, okay.
The first question is, how much is it gonna cost the township to develop this? If it's an excessive amount, can this be phased in rather than done one time? And the second question was, has anybody calculated the annual maintenance amount?
Yeah, so we are planning on phasing it in. It won't be a whole 4.2 million in one dump. And I think you said that there was potentially 4.9 million in grant funding. Granted, that would be every single ship comes in. So ostensibly free, but realistically,
Well,
probably
what's in
not.
the budget for this year for this?
What was in the budget for this year, Chris?
So when we first adopted the 24 capital plan, which included 5 years to prospective costs associated, not just for this, but also a prospective kind of tentative budget to start New Garden Hills, which we still have yet to adopt the renewed master plan. I think it was roughly about 1.4-ish million. I would have to go back to the reference for Smedley Preserve.
Close enough.
The biggest thing was mostly when we briefed it was the fact that that is a defined 100% cash from capital reserve fund strategy. That is not recommended. That's just showing that that's the scale of what would be required if we were just going to throw money at the problem from township reserve position. What we will do is essentially have to not just take, if you want to go to the high level cost kind of overview, those aren't neatly bucketed in those areas. So what you can even do is almost sub-phase out the primary phases as well. So my strategy and recommendation to the board, once we finally kind of gut the master plan, break it up into kind of a palatable phased implementation plan, is understand what is something that we need to have a viable cash grant like a strategy for, what makes sense for us to do based off of non-cash viable parts of the project. And then from there, it'll essentially stretch the phase implementation. You don't want to do this over 10 years, but it's going to be a long approach to getting here because we want to make it not as a significant part of our capital plan capacity every single year is kind of eaten into with just Smedley preserved building costs. We want to make it kind of so you're kind of achieving like, 15 to 20% of your capital budget, not 50, 60, 70% of your capital budget, because we have other priorities to weigh against as well. So long way of saying that it's going to depend, and we're going to have to basically bring this into a more renewed implementation strategy.
But still spending millions of dollars, even if it's over 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's still tax money. And after St. Anthony's, I'm concerned that we don't get in over our heads on this.
Oh, absolutely. Tension between the two projects at the scale they're going to be, even after hearing and deliberating upon the immense original enormity of New Garden Hills and even paring that back, it's still going to be a blended amount of priorities, cash on hand, grants, all that. And that's going to be something that's going to be deliberated upon during the budget sessions after, like I said, we kind of break this down a little bit further. And the big thing is going to be for grants, because luckily for this type of project, there is a significant amount of Pennsylvania grant buckets of funding to support these types of initiatives. So that's good news. Bad news is you have one project and another project happening at the same time, competing for the same grants. That's going to be where we're really going to have to understand of the management, expectation management of residents to understand if we want to do both of these, it's probably going to take a considerable amount of time to complete both for the entire enormity of the scope of work here. So these aren't going to be 1 to 2 year capital projects and then you're done. They're going to be over the course of like a decade. And even then, when you're planting trees, you're going to plant them, and even seeing the full realization of those trees is going to be even further than that. So this is the long-term view for this type of project.
But it's still tax money, whether it's, done in 1 year or spread out over
Yeah.
10. And that's my concern.
Correct.
You don't mind, I gotta sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Steve, did you want to interject?
No,
real
go ahead.
fast? Or-
Hi, Ann Folds from near Hartfelt. I wanted to know how you plan to phase in the meadows and what are the main costs involved in the meadow establishment?
That's a great question. The meadows in their first couple of years, they don't look great. So they come to that full height a few years later. The establishment of the meadows, we are planning in 3 phases and with a mechanical seeding method. I think we want to make sure as well that RES has completed their stream restoration work before we begin that process, because we don't want to try to establish a meadow just to have to do it again. So there are 3 mixes we recommend. Natural Lands uses Ernst. And so establishing that meadow would be one of the priorities. It's actually a little later in the time frame. I think it would be phase 6 is that restoration of the meadows and the landscape.
And who would manage the first couple of years during establishment when it's so labor intensive and expensive?
That would be the township or a township consultant. I know right now you have someone mowing the site. This is a very different task than mowing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's a little more technical and a little more labor intensive. After the meadows are established, though, they need to be mowed once in the first few years and then 2 times after that.
Okay. And I noticed the Ernst list has a lot of species that aren't found in this area. have you had good survival with their lists?
We have, and the three we recommend are three we use a lot. I can name them for you if you'd like. Sorry, I have it on another note here somewhere, but there'll be one predominant species. The predominant species in most, the first mix is for wet areas, and it's more wildflowers. There isn't necessarily a predominant species. In the areas that are wet sometimes and dry at others, little blue stem is a predominant mix. There's a really nice attractive mix also that has a mix of predominantly little blue stem and rye, and that is proposed near the parking area where we have drier soils.
I didn't see any broom sedge in the list, and that's a very, very common grass in this area.
Okay.
Is there potential to augment the Ernst with some very important local plants?
Yeah, I think that's something that can be discussed. They sell them by the pound, so we have
Yes,
to just,
yes.
think about where those areas are that you'd like to incorporate them or mix them in before it's mechanically seeded.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Any other residents? Chris?
Hi, Kate. Chris. Fabulous plan, thank you. Quick question, picking up on Mike, Chris's, thank you, on the budget. Would it be 2034 when we see all the ponds have gone? I'm trying to visualize the preserve without ponds. What year would that be, do you think?
I think it would actually be quite a bit sooner than that, Chris, because the work that Hannah is doing with Res really is kicked off already, right? So, and that work, the ponds, if you remember the red hatched area, I can try and go back to it. A lot of the ponds are in that hatched area. The big pond is not. So that is one pond that the master plan addresses and recommends removing, but is not part of the Res plan. All of the other ponds are. I could also tell you which ones are dry now. For instance, this hourglass shaped pond here, this side has been dry for quite some time. I haven't been there in a while. It might have some water in it, but there's some that are already
Drying up.
because the site had been irrigated and they're not collecting that water.
That's right.
There's kind of a cool pond over here that is also completely dry, but it had a wall around it. So we're proposing it as a kind of walled garden feature.
Another quick question, Big Pond, is that the spring for the Evans Creek?
No, I think it fills from the highway. So this is water running right off the highway. Actually, if you're in this corner, you'll see there's a very large pipe that it flows right below Route 1 and is filling up that pond. That's one of the reasons the pond is so high. This is also a higher elevation, and then water is flowing from that pond down. So all the ponds are they're connected. So once we start dewatering them, they're all going to dry up.
Great, thank you.
And Chris had something to mention about speaking from water coming from the highway.
Just if you remember from our last meeting about the update of PennDOT proposals for the interchange, one of them, which is right in the crosshairs of that pond right there as well, which is township-owned properties for that roundabout solution that'll be going just north of US 1 there along the road there. So likely PennDOT will just remove that entire pond because of the footprint for the most part. So it's one where we will definitely hold off on this area in and of itself until we get that, because that was a 2028, 29 plan in and of itself. And we would be working with PennDOT to review the scope impact of where that's going to be, how much it's going to kind of provide that like impact to that area. But it's just kind of, we won't have to worry about overextending ourselves, worrying about pond management until a lot of these kind of big ticket construction projects, one with stormwater with Res, one with PennDOT from there, until we kind of understand what the final footprint is going to look like. So another kind of a early onset of managing expectations. I just want to make sure everyone's kind of aware of that.
Okay. And Steve, did you have a
Yeah,
introduction?
couple things. First, Kate, thank you. I think that was a very good presentation. The large pond also drains all the way from Polar Road at some point and runs under the Tough Kenneman and the bypass. And there's a lot of watershed that's collected in that little watershed there. Can you get back to the budget page, please?
Sorry, it's
Soon.
taking a while.
We're there.
There we go.
Okay, so there is 100 and $65,600 for a buffer from Bowling Green. Has Bowling Green been approached about cost sharing for that?
No, Bowling Green did attend the committee meeting and the public meeting, and they asked for, a large wall, instead of plantings. We were thinking plantings would be preferred, but that's something that could be broached with them.
Yeah, I would ask them to help cost share that with their facility, for starters. Secondly, the res proposal is for the public benefit is not included in this. That's already been paid for. The township paid that, was it 2 years ago, Chris? Year and a half?
Yeah, the impact to the actual res stream scope of work has already been itemized out of this. So you're not seeing that added cost. And that was part of a prior ARPA-funded initiative. That was the $415,000. So that's already been paid for based off of 2021 bid proposal prices. So we're getting a tremendous value by having them basically come in and execute. We're basically using ARPA funding twice, you know, for the actual that, but then we're able to kind of leverage it to kind of do this larger scale implementation here, which also does a lot of alignment of doing a lot of the restoration work for the park in of itself. So it's kind of a, you know, two birds with one stone.
And res is responsible for the stream bank restoration.
For the first few years and then PennDOT into perpetuity. So we will never have obligated township stormwater maintenance costs and management costs when it comes to the actual implemented BMP for the township.
Right. So that should reduce future maintenance costs on this preserve for the
Correct.
township. As
In terms of ongoing maintenance costs, I know that the implementation of the infrastructure improvements does a lot to like improve the actual structural integrity of the path and bridges. So that's going to be addressed early on. Once you do that, there's not a lot of like ongoing maintenance requirements in terms of like every single year having to do something. Think of like a road paving program. So really there's not a whole, based off of the implementation here, ongoing maintenance costs. That's the whole, I guess, positive outcome for this preserve. It's very passive and low kind of overhead volume wise. I think just kind of some small manicuring of the lot areas and just making sure that it's just kind of kept well. And of course, if we seek to adopt our carry and carry out policy, low trash maintenance as well. So
So, question for you, realistically, to do a project like this, is this a 3-year or 5-year project for getting everything stabilized, the different times that need to be seeded, the plannings? I mean, the stream restoration, I mean, this is like, we're reinventing the wheel on a lot of these things because there's multiple contractors. There's so much site work to do with draining the ponds. It just seems like a lot to do in a 2 or 3-year project for me.
Well, and Hannah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the res work has to be done by what, December 2025?
We have to have, yes, all money needs to be on the books from our side by
Hmm.
December.
but that's for both projects, right? Yes. So this one will likely be done by the late winter of 2025. Yeah, I'm sorry, late winter going in, so like January, February.
Well,
So yeah, so a vast majority of total site work will be done in the next 16 months.
well, and it's key that that work is done first because there would be heavy equipment on site for a while. We don't want to do something that we have to do again. But I mean, in terms of thinking about it in the phasing that we proposed, you don't have to do it all at once. You know, you could just start with the parking lot, just that, you know, having that temporary parking that Mike discussed. And then once res is done working in the area, establish that permanent parking lot, and then you can kind of take it in bits as you go. You know, we're actually recommending that the restoration is 6 out of 7, phase 6 of 7. So that can come later, you know, that we should also wait for the buffer landscaping around the creek to be installed until after res is done, because they're going to be working in that area. So I think in this particular project, it's hard to pin down an exact timeline, but I think if you were to try and rush it, it would create additional costs because you don't want to have to go back and redo things.
Okay, and a question for Rez. So Initially, when we started talking about this project of the PennDOT Turnpike and Township, we felt that we should probably do some sort of video, possibly with a drone, basically. And I think that would be good public relations, A, for New Garden Township and PennDOT, as well as the Turnpike, and possibly for your company as well. Is that something that we can possibly get done?
I can send along an example, that we've done for the initial PennDOT contracts. It's kind of a story map, video, and we would love to do something like that. Because it's gonna be so public facing, it's gonna be a really fantastic case study for you and for us and the whole other school. So, yeah, we would go that.
Perfect. That's all I have. Thank
Great.
you.
Richard?
Yeah, Richard Gaw, Chester County Press. Kate, great presentation. Thank you. Just some button tightening questions here for you. You talked at the beginning about public meeting comments. I didn't quite get the sense that there was a final name determined. There is none?
There is
But
not.
Lochnairn, Sherwood, and Smedley have been bandied about. Is that correct?
They
As
have been proposed.
potential? Another question I have is, I didn't get the length of the trails in both east and west sides. Am I right that the west trails extend 2.3 miles? Am I right?
I might need to, I'll get back to you on that. It's 2.3 miles and cart paths total today, but some of those, there's been increases in some areas and removals in others.
And then 3.6 on the eastern side.
But no, only 1.6 existing cart paths.
1.6, okay. Next question I've got is, it may have been pertinent to the gentleman in the hat who asked the question before, about the lot surfaces. What will you had said they're going to be paved?
The trail surfaces are proposed to be paved multi-use trails.
Is that an environmentally friendly paving that's going to be taking place, or is it just basic asphalt?
That might be something that I also get back to you about. We are recommending a smooth paved surface because we want people to be able to ride bicycles on that surface. Also, it's more comfortable for people who have different levels of accessibility. So, but the exact material that it will be, I don't have that.
Okay.
Driving grant funding through the concept of full ADA compliance and accessibility is also going to be a key outcome of our grant viability. So that's kind of why we want to make sure that it's fully surfaced throughout.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. The last question is, at the very beginning of your presentation, Kate, you talked about something becoming or being 100% funded. Now, am I right in saying that this is the development of the master plan has been completely funded?
Yes.
But that leaves the remaining 4.252 for New Garden to find a way to pay for, and apparently they have potential of $4.9 million in grants, correct?
Correct.
That's all I need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Ajit Kang. I'm from Hartford. I'm a board member there. I just came here today. Everybody has been asking, come here. And I said, at least I'll try to come here. And first apology, I have not been to the facility. And I don't know exactly where it is, but now I'll go once in a while. I'm an ex-DuPonter. I've lived in this area since 1979, but many other places, including overseas. My quick questions are, I saw there is a big amount for furniture and amenities. And in the presentation, there were only a few benches were shown. And I'm sure there is more than that. Okay. Number two is, what attraction is there for children 10 years and less? Number three, is there any facility for picnic or those? And number four is, since it was a golf course, there must be a clubhouse. What happens to that clubhouse? And like many other previous questioners here came, maintenance cost budget is very important to maintain it for another 50, 10, 20, 100 years. That's key. And number 4 is, what you thought about this will be a attracting point for new people to move into New Garden Township. If that's what our, no, there are 2 things. One is to attract me to stay here, not move somewhere. Then we want to bring more. Okay? And whenever I go to all these parks and others, even to the golf course during pandemic, a lot of dogs, pets wander around, and sometimes they are not managed by the people. So we will put some signs, others, how do we manage it? Number 2, is this park is going to be sunrise to sunset, or we'll have some lighting? Those kind of things. Anyway, I asked too many questions, but I'm sure since I'm first time came here, and I drive here many times, and I live there, my grandson, I drive him here and there. That's my question was, children and under, playground facilities, I come to this play here, I thought about it. Okay, so whatever question you want to answer.
Yeah.
that's all.
I might need a, I'll try to answer quickly and then sort of rapid fire through. So in the amenities section, one of the most expensive ticket items there, I think you mean under infrastructure for, well, furniture and amenities. I think that, yeah, that's the most expensive ticket item there is actually fencing, as well as a potential composting bathroom. So the benches aren't costing that large number there. There's a couple different things under furniture and amenities. So fencing, benches, kiosks, signs, the main entrance signs, picnic tables. I think that was another question you had. And then bridges and boardwalks is included there as well. But again, the composting toilet is the highest ticket item there. And then the fencing was another $119,000. I think your next question was about facilities for children to play. The New Garden Township is a hero in terms of conservation. They have conserved an incredible amount of land. And here in Chester County, there was a goal in the 90s when they passed the open space referendum, 30% of the land preserved in 30 years. And New Garden is one of the real winners of that, of that effort. And they have many other parks where there are facilities for children. So right now we're in the park that connects. You can go through the township park. There's, yeah. And then there's also New Garden Hills, which is proposed as much more of an active recreation facility. So this is proposed as a passive recreation. There will be some picnic tables, but is more for children and adults to enjoy the woods and the meadows here. It's a different purpose than New Garden Hills or some of the other township parks. The clubhouse question I can also address. Part of the reason we did this transaction, this acquisition in 2 transactions, was because we needed time for the Smedley family to subdivide out the restaurant, the clubhouse. So that was subdivided out and actually sold to another owner. So there is no clubhouse here, but there is the maintenance facility. I'm sorry, could you throw another question?
And I think my other was maintenance, which I will be talking.
Mhm.
So no need to address that one. On a positive point, my 2 daughters live in Delaware, and always they come to their children here when they come here to your property, garden, it's much better facing out. I was looking for that. Thank you.
Great.
So, yeah, so it was a good point on the buffer for Bowling Green, but I was gonna ask the same question I saw. We're gonna rebuild or reuse a bridge that connects up to the clubhouse.
We are going to try to. So as part of the stream restoration, we are going to have crossings, and Rez is working on that. So depending on what happens with the stream restoration there, we are proposing a crossing go to that restaurant property. We are discussing that.
I feel like that should be another possible similar thing, is connecting up to a business. We could pursue the business, seeing if they wanted to help invest in that asset. I was actually at the park, quote unquote, with my kids yesterday. We walked a full length. So yeah, I fully agree in a phased approach, but the bridges are not going to be able to be deferred very long. If I jumped in the middle of them, I probably could put myself through them, a couple of them. Yeah, I didn't jump, but yeah, they're definitely very shady in many spots. So yeah, definitely put that in your outlook. And yeah, I think if we can defer any bridges, that would probably help with our long-term maintenance too.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Hey, David, I did have, following up on Mr. Dungy's concerns about costs and what comes back to the taxpayers. Can we use monies that we're already getting taxed on, i.e. the open space taxes, to offset any of this stuff?
Yes, so what we are already doing is we're taking 25%, which is the current maximum from open space funds, and putting it into like a fund essentially for these sort of things. So we can't do.
We can't do any more than that?
More, yeah, unfortunately. But that was something we decided a couple of years ago, that.
Yeah, I was aware of that. I was asking more for, because this is where this was originally purchased from, right? From open space
Correct.
money.
Which was then reimbursed almost entirely by grant funding. But yeah, unfortunately, we can't just take all of it from the
Why not?
legislature.
It's our money.
But the law doesn't.
You're actually lucky you even get 25%. That was a more recent thing, so yeah. Although there is proposals to increase that to,
Yeah.
I think, probably a third or a half.
From a legislative, excuse me, from a legislative perspective, there's a bunch of policies being recommended for continuous updates. One of them is, I can't remember the act for open space referendums adoption is Act 25. I can't remember. Pennsylvania has like 1,000 acts. But that would be one where we would want to advocate on the ability to have expanded uses, to have more flexibility, because as a vision for the township, we have said that we want to conserve, but in those conserved spaces, we also want to create experiences like parks that we have around the township. We have like an acquisition and implementation strategy, not just raw acquisition, which means that the open space earmark referendum policy is heavily limiting for us, executing only half of our vision. And that's one we're continuous kind of pushing up through PSATs channels, through PML channels to our state legislators as well, as a part of our legislative priorities, is saying that I would say, if you're talking about the fact that we are hyper aggressive with our open space program, part of it to accomplish these missions, then we should also make sure that we're at the top of the list, saying that this should be something that's looked at as well. Because I think the apprehension is people would just put in those acts and then spend them only on parks. And I think that was the reason they're kind of like piecemealing it out rather than just giving you full breadth of ability to use all funds for whatever you want to use them, as long as it's just open space or parks, I guess in this case, scoped. So we will continue to be the loudest voice in the room for that. But until then, our 25% component right now is covering the cost of ongoing maintenance, and that's inclusive of personnel within the open space fund as a subsidy for the general fund. So in order to pull property tax dollars away from parks types of functions, it's being mostly utilized from 25% per se for earned income tax for open space fund purposes. So it was a way for us to kind of alleviate that burden on our general fund. So that was kind of the best anticipated use of it. But you're right, the implementation costs add up, and it's one where we need to understand what that means, especially not just for this project, but for the other master plan that we anticipate bringing forward in either very, very early summer or sometime in the midsummer timeframe, depending upon when it gets completed by Pannoni.
Thank you. Ann?
Property had been developed, it would cost the township like roads. Something that costs you.
Yeah, as use by right, I think we were looking at something like 88 to 90 homes. I think as the gentleman was asking about what the cost was for not acting. So that's about what that was. Okay. All right. We move on then. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah.
Finalization for the motion tonight, if there's no other questions, if the board is amenable to it, to adopt the master plan. That's not inclusive of us having to actually implement the master plan.
Right.
It's more of an administrative component of finalizing the actual of a completion of its synthesis, so you can close it out from like, it's mostly like a grant administrative function,
Right.
so they can get final reimbursement for it.
Yeah.
But if there's no other questions with it, we wouldn't go back and amend this. We would adopt it, and this would be what we would use to kind of adjust to our township capital planning construct. So if the board is amenable to it, we would seek a motion to adopt.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt? You all like what you heard? Okay, do we have a motion then? Okay, we have a second? Second. Okay, any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Okay, then moving on to the Hartfeld Road condition issue.
All right, good evening. Make sure, is that loud enough? All right. I think I turned the
Good.
sensitivity down well. Mike. All right, good evening, members of the board, public. I am Christopher Himes, I'm the New Garden Township Manager, and I'll be going over tonight a matter that we've been receiving resident complaints from the members of the Hartfeld community and kind of working with members of our public work staff and providing some, at least in this case, some furthering of the analysis to understand kind of what the issue means, both not only in policy, but also in scope cost for potential repairs, and kind of highlight this as another issue where we talk about land development and re-implementation for correcting some issues with original land development, create some, I'll call them some long-term, I'll call it probably non-reversible issues that the township will have to just kind of mitigate through kind of just a coordinated effort between maintenance, recognition, reporting into perpetuity. And this is just something that we have to deal with mostly just because of how certain roads and certain arteries within those roads were built in the first place. So kind of kick this off, if it's not working here. Wait, can you hit the advanced side there? And apologies, I'm still fighting some congestion, so if I have to cough or anything else, I'll try to cover my mouth. All right. So just to bring everybody up to speed, if they don't have any familiarity with the Hartfeld community, it's in the southeastern portion of our township, right off of Limestone and Sharp Road. It includes 17 internal road segments, so it's kind of pervasive in that area. It kind of has a lot of tributaries that kind of branch out from the main hub there off of Sharp Road. And it's kind of, I mean, excuse me, it's to the north side and to the south side in terms of the overall scope of the issue. But looking backwards at the original final land development approval, the constructions of 18-foot wide road segments was approved and adopted by the township at the time. So I think this was the late 90s, I think, and the build out took about 4 to 5 years. I can't remember if it was even longer than that, throughout to the mid 2000s before it was eventually, I think, provided its final CO for transition from developer to property maintenance HOA and the actual onset of the Hartfeld HOA community. But with that, you can see that 18-foot road segments are significantly less than the township's ordinance of 24 feet, which is a pretty adopted standard, not just for our township, but for road segments across the board. And there's for good reason for that. It's the width requirements, it's the ability to create kind of extra capacity for traversing those corridors. But what we ended up doing with 18-foot roads was the reasoning behind it was twofold. One was in order to limit the amount of stormwater offsets required by having more impervious surface, and that impervious surface gains by not building out extensive width of roads was also allowing for further density construct for building more units. So essentially think of it like more rooftops, less roads in this regards. And not only that, they were constructed in a more dense manner. So it wasn't that there was just more units spread out across the entire Hartfeld community. It was more units that were built pretty close to each other for the size of the roads. And so when you compound the issue, you have less stormwater infrastructure, you have very narrow roads, and you have very tight corridors with all these large houses with, most of them with 1 or 2 car garages. So you just have a lot of we'll call it tightness as you're driving around within. And anybody that's been driving around in Hartfield before can pretty much visualize what I'm talking about. So with that, when you talk about lack of stormwater management, and excuse me, in this case, stormwater infrastructure, there's no curbing, there's no raised curb. So when you have significant rain events or any rain event, all of the water essentially just sheets off of the road surface and goes right into the grass off the side of the road. And then you hope, based off of just that kind of green design, if you want to call it that, that eventually takes into the carved out bioswales in order to navigate the water to an eventual retention facility or runoff zone. But that's what you're doing, is you're just saying that it's going to sheet off the surface, hit the grass, and then head to where it's supposed to go. But with that, the significance of extra large-scale weather events, just the natural performance and degradation of whether or not those bioswales are something that is a 30, 50-year solution. There's a lot of factors that play into it. But long story short, now you're just kind of building upon the issue where you have tight roads and very wet, saturated right-of-way areas just off the side of the road. And that creates an issue because people around the township drive off of roads constantly, even on wider roads. So on 18-foot ways, you can imagine just how many times you have people departing the pavement and creating large, muddy trenches off the side of the road. It's not only an aesthetic issue, it's also a safety issue, both for pedestrians walking along the side of the road, as well as drivers who might not be paying attention. They drive off the road and they get really kind of pulled off the road because of just the natural large lip that's created on the side there. So there's a lot of issues that we had to explore. But this was done in terms of addressing this issue previously by essentially just requests for service to the Public Works Department. Our staff would go out, our crew would go out, they would assess the site and try to either just do spot patch corrections, or they would actually put a strip of elongated patch, almost, in this case, not even almost, literally widening the road just by the sheer sake of that they were just kind of filling in these trenches with cement. And so what we're doing now is we're taking approved 18-foot segments, and some now are 19, some are 20, some kind of narrow. And so we have this kind of meandering, we'll call it out in and out kind of within 18 to 20-foot segments across things. So we've already non-standardized the throughput of roads in Hartfield in and of itself just by trying to do that function. So after review with Kenny, we actually went out to a lot of the sections within Hartfield with the yellow tape measure, and we were literally kind of just walking kind of almost parallel along the roads and kind of understanding the real severity of the impact within the right-of-way off of the actual pavement. We kind of got understanding that regardless of what we do, as long as it has the stormwater, excuse me, the lack thereof, without a lack of raised curbs and the road capacity is, we're never going to get rid of this issue there. It will persist into perpetuity unless you were to do some sort of massive revitalization and overhaul of the entire network in and of itself. But we'll talk about that. So here you go. These aren't in the same area. These are just use cases throughout. And this is pretty par for the course, not to put a pun on there for a golf course community, but for the most part, you can see 18-foot, you probably have at least, I would call it 1 to 3 feet of additional areas where you're just kind of branching out. And so I guess the one thing I've understood more so is that even with some of the extensions, maybe a foot out, they'll just drive off of that side too. It almost seems like the limit doesn't really get met to keep everybody on the road for the most part until you get to that full 24 feet. But for the most part, what we saw was definitely most of these issues were occurring within 21 feet. So that's not to say that there's like a clear analytical construct that says 21 feet and you're good above, but it's one where we saw for the most part that that was the case. And for the most part, a lot of these were in, we'll call them either you're turning onto a road or you're going into a cul-de-sac. And of course, that's just because you have narrowly defined corridors. People kind of cut curves all the time. The cul-de-sacs within the community throughout are very tight. They're like pinhead cul-de-sacs. So getting large commercial vehicles is very tough, as well as the fact that people park all over the place in Hartfield outside of even their own driveway. There are extra vehicles they have. And so they're parking alongside the right-of-way itself. So you think about like half their tires are on the grass and half the tires are on the cement. And of course, that also creates just kind of eventual degradation of just the material condition of not even the paving, but also the grasscape within the right-of-way in of itself. And so we actually think we went pretty throughout, and it was tough to find a segment that didn't at least have something. So in terms of pervasiveness, it's throughout the entire community, which I can't remember how many linear miles there are within Hartfeld and of itself across all 17 sections, but we estimated somewhere between at least 25, 30, even 35% of the lippage area around Hartfeld had some sort of issue with, we'll call it this kind of general trench issue throughout the community. So what we also wanted to do was also explore, not just in Hartfeld, but where else have we adopted narrower roads throughout the entire township, and kind of looked at it with twofold. One is there better or similar stormwater management practices in terms of infrastructure? And two, was it one where it was 18 feet or they 21 feet, just anywhere there was less than 24-foot roads? And then in that, how dense are those neighborhoods? Because all of those factors compile into creating the issue we see at Hartfield. And so the good news is this issue doesn't exist a lot of other places, if at all, in the township. So good news is we have a highlighted use case contained to one specific community that we have to think about. And just some continuing, there's proof of Kenny's car. We were driving around in there, but you can even see here, there's already tire marks along the grasscaping here. So this is going to be at some point when it's really wet outside, another mud trench here, probably in the makings. But that's kind of where you see it a lot is, of course, in these cul-de-sacs. This is also one where you can see one where it was, and then you see some other degradation just outside of it for people driving off the lip. Another one is even if you weren't to have people driving off the road, at some point, because of the amount of runoff and the sheeting of rain and the velocity at which that stuff is kind of going into the grass, and they're carrying all the materials off of the surface of the pavement into the grass, this is just going to be a general matter of just stormwater erosion. And the first thing to go usually is the area just up into the curb area. It's kind of less viable grassy areas. So even if there wasn't any issue with road width, just because of the lack of stormwater infrastructure, inlets routing the water towards a more kind of, we'll call it piped infrastructure, you would still see erosion happening all throughout the area as well. So some questions came up that we wanted to try to find an answer through this. One was is the township responsible for maintaining the general condition of the non-impervious area located within the right-of-way, but just outside the paved area throughout the township? And of course, we did the kind of assessment too, is where else are we seeing this? And that's also one where Hartfield is like an amplified use case of a lot of reasons coming together to compound an issue. But even of itself, this is one where if we were to do a certain action in the Hartfield community, and it happens in similar other areas throughout the township, all, was it 64 linear miles of township roads, this is one where we would have a very tough time saying that we could say we were investing here and not over here for a similar type of issue. And that's one we always have to think about. So given the context of the adopted development plan, a lot of, we'll call it hindsight 2020 type issues, is this just a special use case that we have to do special consideration for? Should that even be a thing? Or is it just, this is the adopted plan, this is the impervious surface the township adopted and dedicated the roads to the township to maintain? We're going to narrow our view in maintaining that paved area. What is the best corrective action? Because there are some things to consider in terms of just what actually fixes the certain set of issues. How much do those actions cost? Because that's another one where this is something that, in addition to other infrastructure projects, paving program type projects, this would be an added expense into that capital program that we would have to facilitate a future funding plan for. And right now that's not in scope. We would have to add this into that. And then of course, how does that corrective action fit into the capital priority? So we might say that we have a phased funding plan, but if other priorities pop up, that would lead to de-escalation of this as a priority. And now we're just kind of kicking the can down the road to the extent of lessened, we'll call them contentious expectations from the community residents there. And it's one where if it's constantly deprioritized, it's just never getting fixed. So we'll talk about some kind of short-term tactical corrections and strategic corrections, one of which is if the issue is just the big trenches, why not just fill them with available fill materials that we have, rocks and dirt. We tamp it down, make it so it's safe to actually walk around there and you don't fall into a ditch. And the good use of that one is dirt and rocks are cheap. The price of those generally doesn't go up. So it's one where it's a sustainable plan where we're essentially saying we're not in charge of how it looks, we're in charge of how it functions. This is an area where it's safe. We're going to make it safe and just make sure that it's essentially tamped down to a degree where it's suitable for a car inadvertently driving over it, not sinking down or anything. Another one is patching. There is a cost to that, and so previously it hadn't necessarily been fully tracked as a specific highlighted project, but through the course of tracking certain costs that were going through it, it's roughly about $196 per linear foot. So example was the Hoy Lake Court area, which it kind of looks like a crescent moon of where we did a patch around the cul-de-sac. That ended up being 143 feet. So you do the math, it adds up to almost a $30,000 patch just on one half of a cul-de-sac. So you can imagine if we were to do that throughout the entire area for every lip area that gets degraded over time, that adds up because we're talking about 17 road segments that at some point in time will have an issue that we would have to do that type of repair to. So costs add up for that. And then the strategic one is let's just go in there and completely blow out the roads to 24 feet. We fix the wrong. When this is not inclusive of stormwater raised curbs or any other associated costs with stormwater management in terms of piping and inlets and all the other kind of fun stuff. But just by widening the road in of itself with paving, because you would want to pave over it after you're widening because you're doing that full repair, you know, you're talking over almost $2.5 million just to do the entire community in of itself. And that's a large, significant capital expense. That's roughly 2 years of paving program type cost for the entire township. And it's one where even if you were to do that, you're not fixing the stormwater because that's unscoped costs here. Is the issue going to go away? And that's another one where you'd be spending $2.5 million on an experiment of finding out if that's the case, which that's another risk associated with if you're not doing the entirety of the corrective action. You're only doing, in this case, with widening and paving, a 50% corrective action. You're still subject to the same issue happening again. So you can see the pros and cons there. I don't have to fully clarify those, but long story short, was kind of leaning towards the more tactical, cheap solution than the long-term recommended strategic solution, mostly just because of cost and the unknown of understanding if it'll even work if we do that, which is to a degree of certainty required for when we're doing large-scale capital implementations for infrastructure. We want to know that it works. So that's the staff recommendation. Granted, this comes up with the policy recommendation just for this issue at large for the entire township, because like I said, it's difficult to set a precedent. You're going to do one action for one community, one section without having to do it everywhere else. And so I had Kenny kind of go back and understand what the procurement of that type of fill material would look like as an added measure for when we do our bulk purchasing in the beginning of the year. There will be some impact, although I believe it will be slight. But it's one we're also saying that we are now committed to at least solving immediate risk and safety issues along the roadways within the township. And it's one where the other one is just if the Hartfield community expresses their disconcerns about, I would say, the aesthetic component of it, because it's essentially just a flat dirt patch that we're doing. That's one where we have the justification behind it saying that, you know, this is the plan, this is what we're accountable to provide maintenance for, which after talking with Winnie and then other kind of inputs from staff is that the township dedicated the road. It includes the right-of-way, but right-of-way is for access components to it. It's not for a maintenance component to it, unless it's something like this where it's actually like the risk of some sort of safety type impact. So that would be my recommendation to the board. There is no motion to adopt or advertise or to post anything from a financial construct. It would just be to get your input. And so then also when other people raise this concern about their specific roadways and it looks similar to this, this is the recommended fix. And it's one where I think we're getting the job done, we're doing it cheaply, and we're at least hoping to meet the resident expectation of what the township's kind of stay limitations are. So I'll stop there. If you have any kind of really fun technical paving cost questions, I have my subject matter expert in the back of the room to ask any questions to as well, but I'll leave it up to the board and for public comment.
Do we have board members with questions? No? Any more from the public? Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I was the designee from the Hartfeld HOA to come here and talk to you guys tonight. So thanks for having me. Thanks for the really detailed presentation. Really appreciate the attention that's been paid to this issue. So I think a couple things that I just wanted to bring on behalf of the HOA was Number one, just a process, like what the recommended process is for us to say, you know, on an annual basis or whatever it is, you know, these are the potholes that are really bad that need to be filled with gravel. So just defining what that is so that we can submit that on whatever periodic basis is appropriate. And then second, just some sort of written statement of this policy so that we can go back to the HOA and say, you know, these aesthetic issues, you know, if it's not a safety issue with a deep, very deep trench, if it's just, you know, destroyed grass and gravel, you know, that's the HOA's responsibility to use their budget to fix that. So just something that we can produce to the HOA to kind of compel them.
I can't recommend that the board does that. No, the law is the law and they'll comply with the law, but I certainly don't recommend any kind of written policy just for your development. That's not in keeping with the second-class township code.
Well, I guess the issue that we have is that the HOA basically refuses to make the modifications or improvements and then tells us to come talk to the township. So without anything in writing or any defined statement, I mean, I don't know if you can send us this PowerPoint presentation or something so we can show them that there's some evidence that the township.
It's on their website. It's on the township
It's
website.
included in the agenda packet, and what we can also do is if they need to have explicit discussions, have a tabling session, sit down, explain the issue. So we're willing to kind of liaison on behalf of the residents if that is a concern and a point of contention. So I would just ask if the HOA says the proof of burden is on X, that they kind of set that meeting up, and I'd be happy to.
Yeah, it's just to reduce the need to keep coming to the township,
Yeah,
really,
right.
so we can solve it at the most local level.
In terms of issues management, so one thing we're trying to do is move to a more kind of online reporting function for the township. Right now, it's solely really just on our website in terms of reporting on an issue. And that's one where you can just kind of point residents to say that if they have, we'll call it like a highlighted area that they think deserves attention, they can absolutely route that on an ad hoc basis at any time. All of that stuff gets routed to our public works team, director and superintendent. They send staff out there, they look and assess and try to say, yep, this is something, and then they correct the issue. That's just in version 1. We're going to do more of like an online kind of visual based one through maps. That's going to be part of our GIS project expansion that we're going to be doing behind it, but similar construct, just a little bit more intuitive and user friendly as well. But regardless, there's another one where if like a proposal to the traffic safety committee, you can submit those types of inputs as well. But I imagine there's probably going to be an immediate address of which ones are the highlights to start on. And then from there, it probably makes more sense to move into like an ad hoc type of issues management, we'll call it process, if you will. But we can absolutely work together, kind of chart out like an immediate address of needs and take care of those issues in a timely manner if this is what the board ultimately decides that this is the kind of policy we want to adopt. So I still want to make sure that I get a consensus across the board that this makes sense for the township.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that policy. You other? Yeah.
So we can speak offline in terms of setting up that immediate kind of review and assessment and get a lot of those big issues addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone, regardless of where you live in the township, you don't need to come to the meetings. We're open, what, 8:30 to 4:30? 8 to
4.
8 to 4.
Yep.
Yeah, and with a new website, you can address any issues more directly, more efficiently. So if you have follow-up questions.
It has a big highlighted area that says report an issue and as an icon on our website, and just click into that and you can see the categories. Just click into that and just submit all documents and details, and then it goes, like I said, straight to staff. So, and we're also able to provide feedback on that as well.
Could I
Yeah.
just offer a couple of observations? We live off of Hartville at the bottom of both hills. And my feeling is that speeding really exacerbates the going off of the side of the road because.
I can repeat the question if it's need to be, but do you have a specific intersection you're talking about or roadway segment? But we're talking about
Hartsfeld
speeding.
Drive between Kaolin Road and Sharp Road. We live at the bottom of both hills. And so we're often stopped waiting for traffic coming from both directions. And the number of cars that are speeding at a really high rate is just astounding, sometimes 50 miles an hour. And when you take a corner that fast, you're going to go off of the road. The other observation that I had is that the road used to have a line down the middle, and it's been so long that people don't remember it. but I wonder if that might calm traffic some and keep people on their side.
This is Sharp or which road?
Heartfelt Drive
Hartfeld Drive.
used to have used to have lines throughout the neighborhood,
Right, okay.
and they haven't been replaced over the years. We're getting a lot more traffic cutting through from Sharp Road to Kaolin Road. And so I think that the amount of traffic has also increased in that area. Significant, yes. Yeah.
Chris or Ken, is it, you know that speed bump coming down to Kennett? Where you said slow down 25 miles per hour, you slow down, and they have those soft speed bumps?
Oh, by Lamhicana?
Yeah, and coming
Yes.
into Kennett Square.
Yeah, right.
Coming up. Is that possible to do in Hartfeld Drive? Just as people just gotta slow down as they come down both from Sharp Road and from.
And just to make sure I'm understanding, are these within the Hartfield HOA road sections, or is this township roads outside of Hartfield? Because that matters. I just want to make sure I understand.
This is Township Road.
Township roads, okay.
Yeah.
We can intake these and address them within our traffic safety committee. We meet the third, I think it's like Thursday of every single month. So we'll do a review and assessment on these and come back with like a reported understanding of what the issue is. You have to measure it. We have to get rates of speed. We have to collect
Yeah,
all that data.
but Chief Simpson, the police department, when it first measuring speed on the roads, and Hartfeld was the #1 speed. It's supposed to be 25, and it says, my wife says it's 25. So we thought maybe a line, some kind of guidance and slow down would help the erosion.
We'll come up with like a McMahon, who's our transportation
Okay.
recommended solution. I have no idea. That's why I have to kind of bake on what McMahon's understanding of it.
It does sometimes, but it has to meet certain criteria for road width.
Like I said, it's,
Basically 12 inches of the road by having this line. You got 4 inches for each double yellow line and a 4-inch gap.
there are,
Foot of road is essentially increasing the already, increasing the narrowness of already narrow road.
But it used to be.
If it was, that was like early 2000s, like, yeah, I've been here since.
There was a call.
yeah.
It used to be a single line through there, Kenny. I can remember that.
Regardless, there are levels of complexity to it. We'll do a robust analysis and we'll get back with kind of the conclusions and inform those accordingly. But like I said, I can't speak to anything unless it's been essentially certified by our transportation engineer and they've done their full scope and measure now. So I will just blanket the conversation with that and we will definitely explore it as soon as possible.
Okay. Yes.
I moved into Hartfeld in late 2019, just before pandemic, came from Texas. And almost 4 years. I know I used to get your newsletters from Ramsey Ramble, many of them. And I think the Sharp Road was not paved. I used to send her emails. She gave me a name of email address of Del Dot. And finally they did it. But what I have observed in the last 4 years, I have never seen any of those potholes put with dirt or kind of a gravel or other. And if you were looking at it, I assume your public service department persons would go there and look at them and they will do something. And over the years, they have become much bigger because a lot of even many of the time, the school bus also gets into that because other guys have to go. And many times these trash truck folks, they do that, and many construction people. So if you start doing it, it has to become a annual, some kind of look and fix it. And I at the board will talk to also them, you see, there to see what we can contribute ourselves to help in this effort. And I don't kind of put that 100% ownership is yours, even if it is written there. But we have to be as a team to do it, not like point fingers, or you didn't do it. Okay, and I appreciate the gentleman. He comes there, I don't remember know his name, and for coming, and I promise him that I'll come here. And in fact, about as soon as that earlier talk was finished, I was ready to leave. Then I saw that Hartford. I said, I better stay here. Anyway, so we appreciate it because this is a significant chunk of your ownership as a New Garden Township. And as a team, we need to develop it so that the future buyers or future movers will be more willing to come. And I will definitely pitch in that effort you see from our end. Thank you very much. We need to.
Thank you.
Hopefully do something this year. In fact, I propose them that if we can have one trash removal company will be much better on that. When I was in Texas for 9 years, we had a big HOA about, I think, 3,500 homes. Our annual budget was $4 million. And we had one only trash company, and we would have a contract and have them for sign up that way. That way, they know. And here, it's kind of crazy, really.
Yeah, there's a different trash company every day for Somerset.
Every day. No.
Just to speak to that, proposal for a single contract was postulated, I think, about 5 years ago, and almost met with the level of vitriol from a lot of people who did not want to yield their contract out. So while it might make sense to some, it's against for a lot of others. So it's one where I would probably have to say that that would be a referendum type item or something of that ilk to kind of get the broad consensus to adopt. But it's one where it shouldn't be a staff-led recommendation, even though there is cost savings and probably cost savings to the residents as well. You kind of have to make it so it's kind of decided by that type of action, so.
And that would-
Part of the agreement signed it will be, the kind of trash contract will be awarded by that too. Not really home.
Thank you.
We're one of the few townships that has no single contract around here in terms of like population bases and stuff. So we're
Yes.
actually a little bit out of the norm.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? No. All right. Thank you for the presentation. We'll be moving forward on that. Okay. And we have a presentation, our guest discussion on our carry in, carry out trash policy.
Yes, at last month's meeting, Mike asked for a carry-in, carry-out ordinance, and I wrote one. So that the board has one. Mike has looked at it. I think it meets his approval. So if what this says is that for all the township parks, there will be no trash. It doesn't say in here there will be no trash receptacles, but the practical result of this is there will be none. And everything that anyone takes into a park, they have to take out with them. There is a philosophy called leave no trace that the national parks have adopted, which is essentially that. You go in, see it? You go into a park and you take back out with you everything that you bring in, including animal waste. So that's what this ordinance does. So if you like it, just direct me to advertise it, please.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions from the public? No? Kenny?
I have one minor thing. The section about pet waste where it refers to keeping animals on the leash. I have no problem with that, but can we, or are we even allowed to make it like a 6-foot maximum? 'Cause I know I've seen people with like 30-foot lead and they're not really in control of their dog.
We can, yeah. If that's up, but well, tell me now because I'll advertise. I think your current, sorry, the current ordinance does require that animals be on leashes. It does not, I think, have a length, but I can put that, I can add that if that's something the board wants.
I mean, is that a kind of a separate thing than the trash issue? The leash?
No, it's the same ordinance.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
in the parks ordinance, so it's all together. But I can add it.
Here's what there is in the,
Say again?
anything in there for enforcement?
The ordinance, there is already a parks ordinance and that has enforcement. And so this just adds this portion that I did just talked about trash and waste. But I can add a length if you tell me what you want it to be.
6 feet sounds good.
Yeah, I would go with the maximum or maximum of 6 feet.
Okay. Here's a
problem with people leaving pet waste in a bag on the trail.
Yep.
Is there anything that you could do in the ordinance?
That's what it says. You take that back out with you.
Say pet waste specifically?
Yes, it does. The ordinance, it does.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, so it shall be placed in a proper disposal bag and taken out of the park by the person responsible for bringing the animal into the park. It should be properly disposed of outside the park boundaries, so.
Yes.
Mhm.
Facility rental.
For all events, right?
When the state of Delaware went to carry in, carry out in the state parks, it
Mhm.
radically reduced.
All right, good,
Yeah.
great.
As well as overhead costs, expenses.
And just to bring people back to one of the highlighted reasons for the issue, this wasn't like people using the park and leaving the trash on the side of the road. This was like people bringing in their bulk item junk into
Cleaning
the
their
park
car
to
out.
dispose from their own household. So we were seeing like large items on the side of the receptacles, like this was their, bulk storage removal function for their trash person. So that's kind of why we're mainly doing is to clear that. It's almost blight, if you will. And then, of course, yes, the overflows and everything and the fact that we only have one full-time parks laborer who helps assist with this function was spending almost an hour and a half a day of their time just cleaning up trash.
Okay, so with the amendment of the 6-foot maximum leash, I'll make a motion that we advertise to adopt the ordinance.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Then we have OSRB land approval.
And I can go ahead and do this one. So just as a quick overview, so part of the adopted 5-year capital plan was for properties that were highlighted, excuse me, by the Open Space Review Board that just were nominated properties to explore further due diligence for executing the actual acquisitions of those properties. And so this is one for the property in question. So for all due diligence, performative in advance of a final nomination and recommendation to the board requires an appraisal. This is the appraisal for that. So this is kind of part of the normal adjudication process to get all findings of fact to be able to understand what that means in terms of acquisition. So this is solely for tonight, the appraisal requirement in order to provide that secondary component, which is the final recommendation, which will be brought forward at a future board meeting. And that'll be more along the lines of the full discussion about the nature of the property. We can address some of those matters at the time, but I think we're still collecting some information. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask, and we can take that back to complete that future recommended agenda item as well. So we're informing the entire lens of what we're proposing here. But for tonight, solely the appraisal that was done by the normal Pennsylvania kind of bidding procedures, which was in this case, email bids from appraisal companies in the area.
Okay.
So quick question, this is the medical ventures piece?
I'm sorry?
Where?
Medical ventures
Yes,
with proposed development.
correct, yes.
17 and 3/4 acres.
You're talking about the actual site? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood the question.
Yep.
This is right near Bowling Green.
Right across the
Adjacent,
street.
yep.
It is, it's right across the street up there on Line Road.
It would be adjacent to 2 parts of this Medley Preserve as well.
Do we have a motion to approve the spending of the money for the appraisal?
So I'll make a motion that we authorize the appraisal for the property at 489 Line Road not to exceed $3,400.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, it doesn't impact the motion at all, but This is utilizing money from the open space fund. I
Correct.
just want to make sure I'm realizing that. So this is set aside funding for the function dedicated from the revenue coming from the open space fund
It came.
policy that we have. So I just want to make sure that that's part of it.
Chris, it's also conservation.
What's that?
It's an easement, it's not an acquisition.
Well, just in terms of the general nature of how it would be proposed, but that'll be brought forward, but
No maintenance.
Easement is being
Really.
Go ahead, Chris. You have a. Yes, sorry.
let me make sure, sorry. So for the Pure Light Land Development Extension, this is just a continuation of, proposing another stay for them to finally record the plan. The understanding is this is to, formulate a final financial security agreement, based off of some changes in terms of the phase 1, phase 2 work being proposed by Pure Light. All still kind of phases 1s and 2s combined is going to be within the scope of the final land development plan that was approved last summer. This is just basically saying that while they get that kind of final financial security about how they're going to do phase 1 versus phase 2 and the incorporation of it, that is subject to final amendments. We'll bring that forward at a future date, but this just gives them the time to be able to finalize all of that and post financial security. So nothing more than an administrative matter that we've been in full contact with the officials from Pure Light to kind of get a full understanding of just what this means. And it's essentially, in this case tonight, it's just an administrative matter.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2024-0005. And that's in reference to the Pure Light LLC extension of recording the plan.
Okay, second? Second motion. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right. Then we have a special exemption application for 1421 Broad Run Road.
This was just a highlight of just kind of we'll call it a normal or status quo type of zoning hearing summary that essentially wanted to highlight because some of the issues pertaining to some of our ordinance requires these types of matters, which in this case, essentially just an expansion of a deck, require an inordinate amount of throughput from the procedures of the township to be able to go through the full zoning relief process in order just to get a permit application to build that kind of decks. And so the one that we wanted to kind of highlight is what are kind of those like normal things that we do on a kind of routine basis that would be made easier, but providing that ability for the zoning officer to determine and at the lowest level. So we're not having an inordinate expense also required to go through a zoning hearing process for these kind of like routine type transactions. So while this was essentially another kind of successful outcome of just providing that service through the zoning hearing process, it's one that could eventually just be removed in of itself by changing the policy and allowing more deference to our zoning official through a revised type ordinance. So just wanted to highlight that. You can have any questions on the actual summary of the summary hearing board, but just wanted to bring that forward.
No action.
No action.
Right. I just wanted to point out something. So when we do the rezoning, will we be kind of looking at this impervious coverage percentage? Because if you look at the actual piece of land, it's like 1/8 of an acre.
Yeah.
So most houses in Somerset are between 1/3 and 1/4 of an acre. So I believe that the point of that was putting people on a very small lot, and then you have, the entirety of the sewer system, the retention pond behind them. So obviously they would be at a severe disadvantage of, as you can see, just a deck, which is probably, 250 square foot deck is already taking up half of their impervious.
This one's
space.
more of the actual process is saying that that can still be determined, but not through the zoning hearing process in and of itself. And you could still provide that input. They could pay into that cost and provide that application review complete. It's just one where, because of how we have it written, it requires that it automatically be kind of itemized out of a normal deliberation provided by staff into this longer elongated process to get to it.
I guess my question is going forward, will we be looking at, since we're trying to encourage this sort of like density and these smaller lot sizes, we'll be looking at perhaps like waiving that entirely of the of a minimum?
It would just be on a case-by-case basis, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a purchase of snap-tight stormwater materials. That's a motion to authorize the purchase in the amount of $24,396. Anything to say about that, or we just make a motion to?
No, just as a highlight, we're already kind of month 3 and halfway through our stormwater culvert repair budget that we kind of already said was just kind of constructed to be kind of essentially non-effectual in terms of providing the full amount of cost required to replace and repair all culverts within the township. So just putting it out there that if we want to continue to do this, this is the kind of continual cost to do these types of repairs, and it's pervasive to everywhere. So we're only highlighting these because we're going to be doing road work within the certain right-of-ways that are going to be within the paving program, and these are two culverts that have been assessed for requiring that type of input. But it's one where we might have a roadway that has a significant amount of culverts, that this is going to be something that 50K is not going to be able to cover the full breadth of the amount of culverts, in addition to any other stormwater culvert related issues that might pop up that year in the township. So obviously one where we're trying to do the most we can with what we set aside for it, but in order to really address this issue, we're like through a stormwater master plan that we're essentially put out to Pinoni to provide for future cases. You know, this might be something that once we get that final master plan in place, the ability to do consistent repairs is going to come at a much higher level of cost per year to be able to do so. So we're doing the bare minimum now, but the maximum is something that I don't think we have a true understanding of what that means in terms of added costs into the budget. And of course, that means where's that revenue coming from? So just want to put that out there as well as kind of a precursor to a much larger discussion for the township.
Now, will we go through this every time we need to make a purchase of that amount?
For this one, we did 2 in bulk, so that was one where it just, because we did them at the same time under one agenda item, that was, yeah.
Okay.
But normally, because it's below the threshold per individual ones, we can just do that and execute the plan. But I also wanted to use this as a kind of understanding to highlight a much larger issue.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll make a motion to authorize the township manager to approve the purchase of snap tight and something iron pipe from LB Water Co-Stars vendor in the amount not to exceed $24,396.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. And then last, we have spring cleanup.
Good evening. Unfortunately, this is not as exciting as wildflowers and trees and all of that stuff, but I know, I'm sorry, but it's the last one, so then we get to go home after that. I just want to give everybody an update for the upcoming spring cleanup next month. It is a free event for New Garden residents. There we go. It's a free event for New Garden residents to declutter their house, garage, shed, attic, whatever. It's held right at our Public Works facility, just like it has been in the past. We'll have a contractor bring in dumpsters along the side for brush, general household items, stuff like that. And there'll be workers there helping to sort everything out, telling them which dumpster each thing goes into. It'll be Thursday through Sunday, April 11th through the 14th, 7 to 3, 7 to 7. 7 to 5, and then again 7 to 3 on Sunday the 14th for the final day. We do accept yard waste, non-hazardous materials, appliances, tires and Freon. They do come with a nominal fee because we do have to pay to get rid of them after the event, but we stockpile them and then get rid of them all at one time. And then scrap metal like old lawnmowers, bikes, grills, patio furniture, stuff like that. We do not accept electronics, explosives, or ammunition, propane, and then hazardous materials, diesel fuel, gasoline, oils, oil-based paint, pool chemicals, and stuff like that. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
It's like an old power washer.
Yep.
Okay. No, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for organizing it.
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Kenny.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of spring cleanup, thank you to Brian Sachs of London Britain Township, who organized a group that got together and cleaned up stretch of Newark Road from
Yes.
Broad Run to the Delaware border, as he does annually, I think, maybe apart from a year
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. So he found about a half dozen tires and a dozen bags of trash. So as a reminder, take your trash to our spring cleanup and don't chuck it into our streams. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All right, thank you very much.